right, so what we're going to start off with is a little bit of review on something called domain and range. Okay, so this domain and range, perhaps you would have learned it in Math 10. But yeah, we're going to need to spend a little bit of time today just reviewing what domain and range is. Right? So start off with, we're just going to write out a couple definitions here. So the domain of a function is for the graph of a function. This is the set of all possible x values. Okay, so domain has to do with x. So in terms of the graph, basically we're looking at where there's a function if we were to go from like left to right, back, forth. All right. The other thing here is the range. So the range for the graph of a function, this is the set of all possible y values. Okay, so in other words, if we were to look at a graph, basically we're looking at where's the graph when we go up and down. Right? So, so we're just going to use a couple examples here to kind of illustrate that. So let's just start off with this first graph here, this circle. All right. So the analogy that I like to use is like if I was looking for the domain. Again, this is a set of all possible x values, or in other words, going left or right. So the analogy I like to use is that if we were to run a scanner going from left to right, where would the scanner go off if there was a function? Right? So you can see over here in this section, there's no function. But as soon as I get to, what is this, -4, right? There's a function. There's still a function as we go across here. So if I was to kind of draw a line to where the scanner would go off, right? It would go off between here, right? These 2 points. Again, if I'm running a scanner from left to right. Okay, so there's the function is here. Sure, it goes up, but we're just focusing on going left to right. So there's going to be a function all the way to here, and then there's no function over here. Okay, so for this first example, let's zoom out a little bit here. So for this first example, we would write the domain here. And usually it's written as a D with a colon there. If we were to write it out in words, we would say between -4 and +4 and +4. Okay. Now, notation-wise, and you perhaps have learned this before as well. If I was to describe this in terms of inequalities, it would be the same as writing this: -4 less than or equal to x less than or equal to +4. All right, so yeah, so if you want to write between two values, right, it's always like the lower value first. Your inequality signs will always go in this direction, which is less than or equal to the x and less than or equal to +4, the bigger value. All right, so actually, you know what? Perhaps I'm going to spend a little bit of time explaining why this means between these two values. All right. So the reason for that is because so I'm just going to explain why. This inequality here, we could break this down into two parts, right? We can break it down into just this section here as one. So that would be -4 is less than or equal to x, or in other words, x is greater than or equal to -4. And I'm just going to use a different color here. And then we could if we were to draw that on a number line, if I have -4 here, to describe x is greater than or equal to -4, it would be from -4 on, greater than or equal to, would go in this direction. Now, if I was to look at the other part of this, which in green here, I'm just going to circle, this is x is less than or equal to +4. Okay, so just ignore this part over here first, or just ignore this part over here for now. Just looking at this, x is less than or equal to +4. The way that I would describe it, draw it on a number line, is that the 4 would be here, then x is less than or equal to would go in this direction. Right? So these are all the values. Now, what this inequality is saying here is that this has to occur at the same time. Right? So where they actually occur at the same time is where they overlap. which is in purple here. I'm just going to shade that part in. Okay, so you can see that the two inequalities would overlap between -4 and +4. All right, so that's why this as a whole is, that out again. So as a whole, if I wrote -4 less than or equal to x less than or equal to +4, this does mean between -4 and 4. So hopefully that makes sense. And so that's why this lower number less than or equal to x less than or equal to the greater number. So if I zoom, all right, so we can see here that the domain of this graph is between -4 and 4. So this would be the domain there. So this would be the domain. Now the range is the set of all possible y values. All right. So if a scanner was to run, up and down, where would there be a function? Well, there'd be no function here, but it would start here, right? So this would be, let's say here -3. Yep. And there's always a function all the way up to about here. All right, and that is at +5. Right, so in this case, the range itself would be between -3, this value here, and +5. So the range in this case is between -3. So I'm just going to write -3 less than or equal to y less than or equal to, and it was +5. Okay, so the range is between -3 and +5. So that's what, the range of this graph is. Cool. All right, so let's go on to the next one over here. Now this one here, what you'll notice is that, and actually from last year, this graph should look familiar. It's a parabola. So with this graph, what you'll notice is that there's an arrow here and an arrow here. So what that means is that these arrows mean that these arrows, both of these here, indicate that I guess it's kind of obvious that the function goes up forever, but as well, it goes to the left and to the right as well. Okay, so these arrows here indicate two things are happening. The function goes up forever, but it also goes slightly to the left forever, and it goes up forever on this side, but it goes to the right forever too. Right? So if we were to try to find the domain of this function, since this function itself, even though it's just kind of drawn in here and the arrow indicates here, it actually is indicating that there's a function over here. It's left forever as it goes up. Same with over on the side. So if I ran a scanner and tried to find the domain, there'd be a function everywhere. Okay, so in that case, the domain here would be all real numbers. I'm just going to jot that down. So for this one here, the domain is all real numbers. Okay, so again, so whenever you see two arrows pointing up, it means that, it does go up forever, but it goes left and right forever. Now for the range, let's take a look at the range here. So if I ran a scanner up and down, notice that, this probably goes down and then comes back up. So there's no function down here. So it just starts here at -5, and then it's going to go up forever. Okay, so the range in this case is going to be, all right, so the range in this case would be y is greater than or equal to this value here, which looks like it's at -5. Okay, so so if I was to run a scanner up and down, again, there'd be no function down here. It starts here and then goes all the way up. So forever, right? That's what these two arrows mean. So the range in this case would be y is greater than or equal to -5. Cool. So it's got a couple more here, a few more actually. Looks like it. All right. So so on to the next here. So domain for this function here. Now what you notice is all right, so for this this function here, what you'll notice is that if I was to find the domain, going left to right, these dots mean that it starts and ends at those points. All right, so the domain in this case is, so this value here is at -7. So it's going to be between, going left to right here, it's going to be between, it's going to be between -7 and then the function stops here at +4. Okay, so -7 less than x. Now less than or equal to +4. Now the other thing, the other thing I want to point out here is that whenever you have a solid dot, then you're going to have this less than or equal to. Okay. Whereas if you have a hollow dot, what's happening here is that if it's a hollow dot, it means that it's not actually including that value. It's just slightly there. So that's why this is a strict inequality. Okay. So just be aware of that. Okay. So if you see a hollow circle, it's a strict inequality. Whereas if you spot a solid circle over here, it's including that value. So that's why it's less than or equal to. Okay, so strict inequalities. What I mean by strict inequalities is there's no equal to underneath for hollow circles, and solid circles are for less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. All right, so likewise, let's find the range here. All right, so the range, if I ran a scanner up and down, it starts here at -8 and it goes to 0. Right? So it ends here at 0. So so the range here is between -8 and -8 less than y, less than or equal to 0. Okay. Cool. All right, next one here. This graph here. So even though this doesn't look like a traditional function, this is a graph where we have points, right, that are parts. So again, if I was to run a scanner left to right, it would go off here, right? Then it wouldn't go off until here. Sorry, I shouldn't put it down. Just going left to right. So it'd go off here, here, and then there. All right. So this time the domain here, they are actually specific values. So you're just going to write x equals. All right, so the first x value here appears to be -4. And then the next one here, this x value here is at -3, -2, -1, and then +1. Okay, so whenever you got points, so basically what you're going to do is just list off the x coordinates of each one of these points. Now, this one here, notice that these 2 points have the same x coordinate, but we only have to write it once. Right? Again, going left to right, when would the scanner go off? Here, 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 and here. So specifically at these values. All right. Whereas over here, the previous example, the scanner would go off all the time between these 2 points here. So this is what they call a continuous function. So likewise, the range, again, they're just points, so I'm just going to write y equals. So going from down to up, the first one here is -1. Then I got these 3 points share the same y value, but I'm only going to write it once. So sorry, write the -1 first. So then we have 1 for these 3 points, and then these 2 points share the same y value. That would be 2. All right, so that would be the range. All right, y equals -1, y equals +1, and +2. All right, cool. So so we just got a couple more here. So these ones perhaps I can do fairly quickly here. So the domain in this case is again between. So if I go left to right, there's a function at -2, and then there's always a function until +2 here. So domain here is between -2 and +2. The range, if I go up and down, you can see that it starts at -4. There's a function all the way up to 0. So between -4 and 0. All right. Last one here, domain. So again, going left to right, starts at -2. And It's a function. Now again, these arrows indicate that the function itself goes to the right forever, but they also go up and down forever as well. Okay, so the domain in this case is from -2 on. So x is greater than or equal to -2 is the domain. Okay, so again, at -2 and anything greater than. So these two arrows indicate that the function goes on forever to the right. The range, you can see that, yeah, if I run a scanner up and down, again, these two arrows not only indicate that it goes to the right forever, but they actually go up and down forever. So the range here, there's always going to be a function if I was to go up and down. So the range here would be all real numbers. All right, cool. So yeah, so that's the first lesson here. Just has to just do a little bit of review for domain range, because that stuff actually shows up a lot in this first unit. Now for practice, to open that up. So it's this worksheet here. So again, you're just being asked to find the domain and range of these functions. Now, the only thing I want to point out here is that, yeah, so some of these questions have a hollow dot, some of them have a solid dot. However, in the answers, they're all just written as strict inequalities. So it's a slight technicality. Actually, that should be a Y there. But yeah, so just be aware that, yeah, these are all written as strict inequalities, even though some of these should be, less than or equal to and less than or equal, but it's just a slight technicality. So yeah, so you have these these 9 graphs as well as these 9, but it should be, or 8, but they should be fairly quick. All right, cool. All right, guys, so that's the first lesson. Ciao.